Imagine the scene: a 40-ton steel bullet, guided by a single exhausted human will, begins its descent. The highway drops away from the horizon, a concrete ribbon slick with the evening dew. The first warning sign isn't visual, it's tactile. The brake pedal begins to travel deeper toward the firewall than it did 5 miles ago. It feels spongy, hesitant, like shaking a hand that doesn't want to be held. The air in the cab turns acrid, the metallic, burning stench of shoe rubber and friction material cooking under immense pressure. This was the existential terror of the road for generations of truckers, the slow, creeping realization that the machine was losing its grip on physics. For decades, this was the silent dread of every mountain route. You were playing Russian roulette with inertia, and the gun was getting hot. The fire at your wheels was hungry, and the only thing stopping you from becoming a smear on the valley floor was a set of drums that were rapidly turning to molten glass. There was no backup plan, no safety net, just the road, the load, and the abyss. Enter the Savior. It goes by many names, but the world knows it as the Jake brake. Officially, it's the Jacobs engine brake. It is a revolution hidden within the engine block, a mechanism that redefines physics. It turns the very beast that propels the truck into its own anchor. No heat, no friction, no fading. It holds 80,000 pounds steady on a 10-mile plunge without a whisper of protest from the wheel brakes. But salvation comes with a price, and that price is noise. That is the sound of controlled detonation, the bellow of the Jake brake.
It is the sound of energy being forcefully evacuated, of air being blasted out of the engine cylinders like cannon fire. To the driver, gripping the wheel with white knuckles, it is the sweetest symphony of control. It means the mountain has been conquered.
It means he will see his family tonight. But to the weary resident in the valley below, pulling the pillow over their head at 3 a.m., it is the sound of a nightmare. To understand this paradox, you have to understand the machine's nature. Friction brakes are simple. They squeeze a pad against a spinning disc. But that action is a suicide mission on a mountain. The energy of a moving truck doesn't vanish. It transforms into heat. On a long grade, that heat builds exponentially until the brakes fade, the pads glaze over, the fluid boils, and you're left holding a useless lever. Why are diesel trucks so prone to this runaway effect? Here lies the irony. The engine, the source of the power, offers zero resistance when you lift your foot. A gasoline engine has a throttle plate. Lift the gas and the plate closes, creating a vacuum. The engine has to work to suck air through that restriction, providing natural resistance. A diesel engine, it has no throttle plate. The air rushes in freely. So when you're coasting downhill in a diesel, you are essentially in neutral. The engine is just spinning with the wind, offering no help. The entire brutal burden of stopping a 10-ton juggernaut sits solely on those overheating drums at the wheels. It is a design flaw that turned mountains into monuments of fear. In the years before the Jake, the industry's solution was a collection of desperate ambits. Trucking schools taught the pumping method, a brutal, rhythmic dance of stabbing the brakes and praying they hadn't cooled too much. You'd see drivers on the side of the road, parked for 30 minutes, just sitting and waiting. They weren't resting. They were letting the steel drums cool down enough to keep them from boiling the brake fluid on the next switchback. Then came the gravel ramps. The runaway truck ramps, those angled piles of sand and gravel that jut off the side of the mountain, were built as an admission of failure. They were a monument to the fact that physics was winning. They weren't designed to prevent disaster. They were designed to make it survivable. They were for the driver who had lost the math, the driver who was playing the odds and knew the house was about to win. The man destined to fix this problem had felt the cold hand of disaster firsthand. Clessie Cummins was a pioneer, the founder of the company that still bears his name. He was a man obsessed with proving the power of the diesel engine. In 1931, to prove his point, he set out on a cross-country speed record in a diesel-powered truck. They were flying, a diesel race car strapped to the bed, heading for the coast.
But on the fifth night, they hit the infamous Cajon Pass in California. Route 66 plunged through gravel switchbacks at a terrifying grade. With his two companions asleep, Clessie started the descent in the wrong gear. The brakes gave up. The truck accelerated. He couldn't shift. The pedal was mush.
He barreled through the bottom of the canyon, only to find a freight train crossing the road directly in his path. He missed the side of the train by inches. He sat on the far side, shaking. The image of that passing caboose burned into his memory. For 24 years, that moment haunted him.
It was a near miss that became an obsession. Could the diesel engine, the source of the problem, be turned into the solution? In 1955, retired and restless, Clessie and his engineer son Lyle went to work. Their breakthrough came from understanding the physics of compression.
A diesel engine squeezes air to an extreme ratio, 18:1. Squeezing that air to such immense pressure takes a massive amount of energy. Normally, you inject fuel at the peak of that pressure. The air ignites, and that energy is released in an explosion, pushing the piston down in the power stroke.
Clessie had a radical thought. What if you stole the explosion? What if, right at the peak of compression, you opened the exhaust valve? You would release all that compressed air, the energy you just spent to squeeze it, straight out the exhaust pipe. The engine would absorb energy on the compression stroke, but it wouldn't give it back on the power stroke. The engine would become a giant air pump, using the truck's forward momentum to turn the crank, which would fight against the compression of air in the cylinders and dump that energy out the tailpipe.
No heat, no friction, no fading. Just pure, unrelenting resistance that would never fade. Clessie took his idea to his own company, Cummins. They passed. Undeterred, he partnered with the Jacobs Manufacturing Company, a drill chuck maker looking for a new direction. In 1961, the first production units shipped.
The official name was the Jacobs engine brake, but truckers, ever practical, gave it its iconic nickname, the Jake brake. The effect on the industry was seismic. Imagine the relief. Drivers who ran the Grapevine in California or the brutal grades of I-68 into Maryland engaged the Jake at the top.
They set it to match the load, and they rode the mountain down at a steady 30 miles per hour, their foot hovering over the brake pedal for safety, but never touching it. The mental load, the constant, draining calculation of how much pedal do I have, vanished. The truckers weren't just saving their brakes, they were saving their sanity. For the men who owned the trucks, the Jake wasn't just a safety feature, it was an ATM. The math was simple. A truck without a Jake would go through a set of brake pads every few months. A truck with a Jake running the mountains correctly could make those pods last 2 to 3 times longer. For the independent owner-operator scraping by on thin margins, that wasn't just maintenance, it was his truck payment. It was money to keep the business afloat.
The Jake brake paid for itself in months and paid dividends in years. It was the rare invention that saved lives and saved money without burning a drop of extra fuel. But the cultural clash was brewing in the smoke of the 70s and 80s. This was the era of the lone wolf trucker.
Chrome stacks stood tall like chrome cathedrals on the sides of cabs. Straight pipes, exhaust systems with no mufflers, were the status symbol of the independents. They were a promise of raw, unapologetic power. And they were the perfect amplifier for the Jake brake.
The Jake brake works by dumping air in rapid-fire bursts. A muffler is designed to absorb that concussion. A straight pipe just projects it. The decibel difference isn't linear, it's exponential. A muffled Jake is loud. An unmuffled Jake through a straight pipe is an auditory assault. It takes that rapid-fire bark and turns it into a sonic boom that carries for miles. The towns at the bottom of those mountain grades had enough. The serenity of mountain living was shattered by the staccato roar of engines fighting gravity.
Residents, exhausted and furious, packed town council meetings.
The complaints were visceral, rattling windows, shattering sleep, children waking in terror.
The response was the sign. It's one of the most recognizable fixtures on the American highway. A stark white rectangle, black letters, no engine brake. Some even targeted the brand, no Jake brakes. It was a blanket ban, usually accompanied by a hefty fine.
Jacobs fought back, arguing that using their trademark in a prohibition was unfair. They argued that the muffler was the problem, not the brake. But the towns were sick of nuance. The signs multiplied like weeds, from the Appalachians to the Sierras. The conflict became intractable because both sides were absolutely painfully correct. The truth, often lost in the shouting, is that the noise has largely been fixed. By 2022, the technology had evolved. Cummins, Clessie's original company, eventually acquired Jacobs Vehicle Systems, bringing the invention full circle. Modern engine brakes are integrated with electronic controls and variable geometry turbochargers. They are quieter than any straight-piped rig from 1983.
They barely exceed the legal noise limits for a working vehicle. Some states wised up. Instead of banning the brake, they banned the modified exhaust. Colorado hits offenders with steep fines for using the brake without a working muffler.
Maryland took a more nuanced approach, posting signs that read, "No modified exhaust," instead of "No engine brake." But those old no Jake signs, they remain. Politics moves slower than engineering. To the towns, they are a symbol of defiance against an industry that doesn't respect their peace. To the trucker, they are an insult, a demand to sacrifice safety for the sake of a lobbyist's vote. The runaway truck ramps are still there. They are maintained, lit, and ready. They sit as a warning, a physical reminder of what happens when the technology fails.
They stand there, silent witnesses to the nightmare of the pre-Jake era. The tension between the driver and the resident is the tension of modern commerce. It's the clash between the machine that needs to move and the home that needs to rest. The Jake brake, the roar of reason, is more than a gadget.
It is a testament to human ingenuity, a proof that we can outthink the mountain. But it also shows that no engineering marvel is perfect. The sound is the echo of our own progress, a reminder that technology solves one problem, but creates another.
It is the sound of the mountain being conquered and the sound of the neighborhood waking up. It is the voice of the hero and the noise of the villain. And until we find a truly silent solution, the debate will echo just as loudly as the engine itself. So, where were you? Were you gripping the wheel on the grapevine when you first heard that rhythmic brake rat-a-tat and realized it was your salvation? Or were you lying in bed in a valley town, counting the rumbles of the trucks as they rolled past your window? We want to hear your story. Whether you're a veteran driver, a local resident, or just a fan of the road, drop your memories in the comments below. Thanks for watching.